I think the notion of a digital subscription or pay for some digital version really has the limitations of language with preconceived concepts, preconditioning people to answers that may not be accurate. Another interesting follow-up to that study would be to use different words to describe the kind of content that people might pay for. And you might be surprised. If you were to keep the word digital out of it, but still suggest that, imply that, you might get a different response. You know, it's always going to come back to the value proposition, Dan. It's always going to come back to that. We confuse the value proposition with its means of delivery. We make all sorts of prophetic declarations, and we miss the fact that if we deliver a better value proposition, people are going to buy. And so the real question isn't, will people buy digital subscriptions? The real question is, how can we use the digital landscape, the ecosystem, all of its advantages to deliver a better value proposition? The minute we answer that, we solve the real problem.
Well, excellent. Let's talk about how to deliver that better value proposition for newspapers, because in the follow-up survey we're running, we are asking customers instead about different elements of value that might be of interest to them, might encourage them to subscribe. So one of the things we're asking about is credibility, right? Credibility seems so important to newspapers, and it also seems so important to the value proposition. What advice would you give to newspapers to communicate their credibility and to create a value proposition?
Well, I think we are all confused about brand. And until we sort that out, we're not going to figure out how to survive what's taking place, the tsunami that's taking place in the way people are receiving their information. Brand is the aggregate experience of the value proposition. And I don't just mean one person's, but when I use the word aggregate, I mean the entire marketplaces. You may not have an Apple product, but if you've heard about it from your friends and in the media and other places, those are all brand touches. And those are all, they're forces drawn, not from a brand promise, but a brand expectation. See, an expectation is preceded by a conclusion. I conclude that when I get a product from you, it's going to have this customer experience. I'm going to experience these values. When I conclude that on my own, there's a lot of interesting things that can happen. No one ever saw a viral campaign take off because of claims. It takes off because of conclusions. Somebody sees something and concludes it's funny. Somebody sees something and concludes it's interesting, and more. And the implications of that motivate them to share. But no one said, hey, I just got this great new ad that claims newspapers are going to deliver better value, and they sung it all over the country. We're too busy as marketers making claims instead of fostering conclusions. And that connects in a very tangential way to what we're talking about, but also in a very direct way, because for the newspaper to remain credible, it has to make certain that in its pathway forward to revenue in a digital environment, it doesn't inadvertently prostitute the essence of what made newspapers great to start with. That's high quality writing, journalistic integrity. It's trust earned between the reader and the editors and the writers and the brand. It's also, in many cases, local in the sense that it's produced in a sense by someone in your family, your community, for you in your community. And this is the advantage that regional publications and city publications can have over news outlets that don't understand the region, the neighborhood, and what matters to the people who live there. And it also gives us a hint into where the newspaper business can go in the future. Because specificity converts. And one thing we've discovered in MECLABS is that everything important that we want to remember, teach, and apply was true 1,000 years ago, is true today, and will be true 1,000 years from now. And 1,000 years ago, before we had some of the complicated business terms we use, specificity converted. Specificity is always the key to conversion. Specificity implies that the very specific offer that's very relevant to my specific need, my urgent, important, and relevant need, that appeals to me, and I'll say yes more often. Now, newspapers in the past had no way to deliver specificity at the level we can now. With the digital traces that we capture from the experience of every subscriber who engages with us in the online world. We're given an insight into their decision patterns, into their interests. I think we have to re-envision the entire newspaper business. It is actually a treasure trove of data. And there aren't very many organizations anywhere in the world that could compare with the type and even the breadth of data that a newspaper can gather. Now, that might be frightening to some, because like any good thing, it can be used in a bad way. But let's just for a moment warrant that that's not the issue. A newspaper should be able, in a digital environment, to deliver a better value proposition because it could understand who I really am, what I really want, and deliver to me that in a genuine way. We think we understand personalization today. We'll be laughing at personalization 20 years from now, and what we think is personalization, the way we laugh when we think about Atari computers and Radio Shack Tandies. The world's changing so fast, and we're so primitive. I think the newspaper business of the future is a technology business. And I think it's leveraging its data in masterful ways to produce a better customer experience. And by the way, within the bounds of ethical, honest, and I know that's two words that are closely connected, and honest may not need to be stressed, but I think it needs to be particularly stressed, the integrity of what made newspapers great. We can provide a better value proposition to advertisers also. Because we know more now about a subscriber. If we're properly collecting data, useful data, designed not to exploit the subscriber but serve them, then we can stop serving ads and start serving our readers. We can design their interaction with our sponsors or advertisers to be far more valuable, far more rich, far more relevant. And while I think there's inklings of that going on today, I think, again, we think too small about this, and we don't recognize its true capability to completely transform the experience we have with journalism. And it's not just journalism per se, but all that journalism was packaged within in the city or community newspaper that many of us grew up exposed to.